the web is saturated with AI generated content. University professors warn of students losing critical thinking skills, and enterprises rush to deploy AI tools across their workflows. Yet, amid this technological upheaval, we are missing a fundamental insight. AI doesn't replace human intelligence, it amplifies it. And like any amplifier, the quality of what comes out depends entirely on what you put in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving tech space. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, when Chat GPT burst onto the scene, many assumed we had entered an era of cognitive automation. Students could generate essays instantly, developers could write code without thinking, knowledge workers would delegate entire projects to AI assistants. Now, recent research challenges this narrative. A study of experienced open source developers found that when using AI tools, they actually took longer to complete tasks than working without AI. Yet they estimated they were faster. So, this cognitive dissonance reveals something crucial. We fundamentally misunderstand what AI tools actually do. So the problem isn't the technology, it's our mental model of it. Let's welcome Arun Ramchandran, also known as RAC, CEO of QBurst, to highlight that this shift isn't about technology, it's about the human transition, how people become comfortable as they see AI amplifying their own capabilities. Hi Arun, how are you doing?
Very good, Priya. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Likewise, Arun, it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast. And of course, I think we are going to discuss something very crucial and very important, and probably debunking some of the myths that we have surrounded ourselves with the hype of AI and generative AI. And of course, now we have agentic AI models. So let's start by telling our listeners about QBurst. Our listeners would want to understand about the company, its specialization, or any particular solution the company is offering.
Absolutely, no, happy to. I took on as CEO 9 months ago. Prior to that, my career has been with some tier one providers, technology providers like Capgemini, Hexaware, and Infosys. Been based out of the Silicon Valley for the last 25 years, and hence have a good idea of what's happening in the startup space, in the local ecosystem, combined with the engineering strengths that India offers across different technologies. So the reason why I joined QBurst is the immense potential it has in its field of specialization, which is primarily around digital engineering. The way I would characterize QBurst, it's a design-led digital engineering experiences and data solutions firm, right? It is profitable, it is growing, it has a few key strengths in sectors like retail, and within retail, primarily in the luxury commerce space. In fact, we work with some of the top luxury brands in the world and one of the largest e-commerce retailers, which is Japanese headquartered. And we have a large engagement with them doing their entire e-commerce. We also work with high-tech and healthcare companies. We have presence in Japan. Actually, 30% of our revenues comes from there. Presence in North America, Middle East, South Africa. And so these are some of our strengths, but our primary focus is design and digital engineering.
Thank you, Rak, for that great overview, and I'm really glad to understand, how QBurst is redefining digital engineering by making it more design-led and experience-driven. And
Mhm.
I think, it's the kind of solutions or the kind of real-world impact that the company is trying to create. I think it is just beyond the technology, and it's
Correct.
more about the business outcomes and user experience in an AI era driven world. Moving ahead, Rak, you are a veteran industry leader and you bring around over, I think, 25 years of experience, and you have a unique vantage point that is focused on helping enterprises transition from costly AI pilots to sustainable and measured value. So, we would
Mhm.
like to know more about you, Rak. How has your journey been till date? And you kind of highlighted your interest at QBurst, but we would
Mhm.
like to know more about your contributions and your role at the company today.
Absolutely, yeah. So I joined Cubers, but as you know, Priya, there is a whole lot of things happening in the world in technology, in finance and economics, and in general in the geopolitical environment, right? So this is a big period of transition, disruption for all of us, right, worldwide. So taking on a leadership role during this time, these kind of times, means something different. And the level of confidence on what the core is, right, that is important. So QBurst has a very set of inherent strengths, and combined with this market opportunity that I see, which I'll explain shortly, right? The market opportunity we have is around the whole AI-led service model disruption which is happening, the role of AI in enterprises becoming more productive, growing, and changing their business models. We are not there yet. AI has a lot of promise, a lot of hype. But as you see from some of the statistics you yourself mentioned in your introduction, there is some adoption aspects which are still holding enterprises back. See, business to consumers, AI adoption has been much faster, but business adoption has lacked that, right? And just from Davos, I was just seeing some statistic that 56% of the CEOs are not really happy with the returns they have got. So how does one change this situation, and what role can a company like QBurst play in it, and how we are leading to it, right? So what we have done within QBurst is, first of all, I realized that there is a lot of inherent AI related strengths and capabilities in the company. So we have tried to now put it all together under a framework, under a positioning statement we are calling as high AIQ. And it's a combination of three things. One, we have great technology skills, which we are calling as high IQ. We understand customer requirements well. Our focus is on solving customer problems and delivering solutions, so which we are calling as high EQ. And now, of course, with AI coming in the play, we have essentially got this all together under our high AIQ branding, and which we have trademarked as one of our positioning statement for QBurst. So that is really one of the main starting points there. The second is our vision for growth, right? So as a company, it's a private equity owned now. Multiples is the private equity firm which took ownership in April. That is when I came in. We are basically determined that this will become a 3x its current size in the next 4 to 5 years, right? And it's an aggressive target, but very achievable, right? Especially if we put our the right people and the right strategy in place. But we want to get to 3x the size with 2x the number of people. So we want to break the linearity between revenue and people, and that can be achieved through three ways. One is obviously AI-driven productivity will play a big role. The value positioning of QBurst, right? The price points, the value we deliver to our clients has to go up as well. And this will also mean a more diverse set of delivery models and commercial models. Currently, which we don't have that diverse of a workforce. Most of our workforce is in India. We will need to become more global from that perspective. So those are the few things that we are essentially aspiring towards, and what we have done now in terms of our strategy, in terms of our structure. So, we initiated a whole process of transformation in the last 6, 8 months, like right from a focus strategy on certain geos and certain verticals, narrowing down a few solution areas, creating a new structure which is more geo-based business unit and solution-based service lines, investing in go-to-market, which traditionally had not been a big investment area for QBurst in the past. So all of these we are putting in place while not changing the core DNA of the company, and want to make sure that this becomes the pioneer in AI-driven service delivery model in the industry.
Thank you, Rak, for that insightful overview of your role and your journey. And I find it very interesting how your role and contributions seem to sit at the intersection of execution and vision.
Yeah,
Now,
no, very exciting
yeah.
period. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Of course, in your journey, overall, Rak, you have been focusing more on the exponential value continuum of AI. So
Mhm.
basically, that represents the rapid accelerating growth of artificial intelligence capabilities and the compounding value they generate across business, society, and technology. So this
Mm,
concept moves beyond linear improvements, suggesting that AI's ability to learn, reason, and act is doubling at an increasing pace. And
Yep.
some estimates even suggest that AI agent capabilities are doubling every 3 months. So
Yeah.
you began developing the exponential value continuum of AI, which also is known as the 4A model, nearly 2 years ago. So
Yep.
what problem were you trying to solve with this framework, and why does it feel especially relevant now as we are already in 2026?
Yeah, no, it's a very important, insightful question, Priya. So the 4A model is my model in a way, right? I mean, although certain parts of the industry may have started adopting it, 2.5 years ago, probably just 3 years ago, the whole chat GPT thing happened, right? And we started the Gen AI consulting and practice unit at Hexaware. That is my previous organization, which is the Carlyle-led, technology services entity. And I was already leading the high tech and professional services business units. Prior to that, I was also handling the digital transformation service line, and this became a new initiative that the board tasked me to do. And this transformed into overall AI, right? So the entire AI related solutioning work, accelerator work, consulting work rolled into this. You also mentioned in your introduction a lot of hype around chat GPT, Gen AI in the last couple of years. Obviously, with the hype, there was hopes, there were fears, there was all this concern about AGI, right? People are saying, oh, artificial general intelligence is going to happen soon, will happen now. Well, what I wanted to do and what me and my team decided is put this 4A framework really to break down this stage of AI evolution from where it was and where it could lead to when it leads to finally AGI or true autonomy or true super intelligence, right? And which is still some ways away, as we know, right? And I think the idea was also for us to explain this to clients, like that while true autonomy is still far away, there is a framework to look at different stages of AI, how each phase is different. And it's not just linear, it is exponential, right? 2 times, 4 times, 6 times, whatever, in some cases, much more than that. And it is different than traditional automation and traditional AI, right? So we wanted to demystify AI for business, right? And so we developed this 4A model to move the conversation really away from, okay, AI is either automation or cost cutting and efficiency to AI could be a value multiplier. It can do this through, different stages of 4A. And let me just, for the audience, let's just quickly explain what that 4A model is. Okay. So the 4A model essentially breaks down this AI curve into 4 phases or 4 stages, right? One is automation, which most of us are familiar. We have seen this in the past, and it is basically about repetitive stuff. Obviously, in the past, it was industrial automation. More recently, it has been more robotic process automation and so on and so forth, right? The second A is really the augmentation, okay? And the augmentation is where things start moving more towards what Gen AI brought to play, what we started seeing in terms of content creation, what we started seeing in terms of what we now call as co-pilots, right? Where AI is working alongside the human being in real time, right? It doesn't change the nature of the task. You're still doing what you're doing, but it makes the human faster, sometimes maybe more accurate or better informed, right? So it's more like data heavy lifting where AI is doing the data heavy lifting, but the human being is still the primary decision maker, relationship owner. I mean, to give you a practical analogy, it could be like modern driving, right? Not the full self-assisted driving, but you're driving the car, but it has its sensors, it gives you some signals, it tells you when lane changes have happened, or maybe in a bank, an advisor, right? They can look through all the 50,000 plus, records and, provide you some customized advice, or an insurance customer service agent. So those are all examples of what we will call as the second A, augmentation. Now with agentic AI coming into play, the shift is moving from more task oriented to more goal oriented or outcome oriented, which is trending more towards the third and the fourth A's, which are essentially amplification and autonomy. So, amplification is similar to what I think the term you also use, cognitive amplifier, right? It doesn't just help you do a task, it actually scales your intent and changes the human's role from a doer to an orchestrator. It occurs when a small team or a single individual can scale to achieve more than what was previously thought possible due to time or resource constraints, right? So, just as an example, augmentation is writing better email, amplification is basically triaging your entire inbox, all your unread emails or to-dos and so on, and things in the drive, and helping you with some actionable steps or insights. Or it could be generating more designs. We work with some of the luxury fashion houses, right? So generating more designs and 3D models for manufacturing, right? Through and just improving the scale of the team. So one person managing 10 AI agents rather than 10 people working on something and still getting much more done. And then the final A is autonomy. I think we are getting there soon, but full autonomy is still like, out there in the future. But that's when, AI just operates based on guardrails and can take decisions and take actions without intervention on a regular basis. Does that help?
Definitely, Rocket. That was a really powerful way to help us understand the 4A model. And I think what also makes this feel especially timely right now in
Mm.
2026 is that because the entire conversation around AI is clearly shifting. Because
Yep.
I believe we are moving past novelty and efficiency gains, and we are focusing into questions of orchestrations, accountability, and strategic advantage. So the
Yep.
frameworks that mattered in 2023 probably helped companies start their AI journey. But what you are describing right now helps them scale it responsibly and sustainably.
Correct. In fact, Priya, I have also used another acronym, GPT. Now, not the same GPT as Chat GPT. We are
Okay.
calling it growth, productivity, and transformation, GP&T. So a lot of the initial use cases of AI were productivity, P, but increasingly now they are into growth.
Mhm.
And with agentic, they will be more into transformation of business models and workflows and so on.
Right, right, definitely, Rak. And I think that's where, in a recent interview, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella addressed the current state and future of AI. And, it's a caution against the overhyping the concept of artificial general intelligence. He
Yeah.
emphasized that claims of achieving AGI milestones are misleading and advocated for focusing on practical growth metrics, suggesting the real benchmarks should be global economic growth, which is kind of reaching new heights. So I think that's why
Mm.
we need to go beyond the arguments of slop versus sophistication and develop a new equilibrium in terms of our theory of the mind. And this is the product design question we need to debate and answer, like, the new cognitive amplifier tools. So,
Mm.
like he also described that AI as a cognitive amplifier. So, Rack, in practical terms, how does AI amplify human context, judgment, and speed beyond just automating tasks?
Yeah, and I think Satya Nadella has said something very relevant in this whole debate, right? I mean, one about AGI, two about cognitive amplifier. And as I mentioned, as part of the 4A model, amplification is the number three in that 4A exponential value curve. So pretty powerful, much more powerful than just augmentation. And the whole shift, right? Practical terms, how does this amplify human context judgment? I think we are getting there, right? Especially with the agentic shift that is happening. It's a shift not just in terms of what the agentic capabilities are, but also how an enterprise functions, right? Moving away from simple automation to becoming a little more self-aware, a little more proactive. And I'm addressing this more from a business and enterprise perspective, although I think the examples of how AI amplifies context and judgment on a consumer application perspective, whether it is full self-driving cars or whether it is the kind of amplification we are getting in our personal lives through use of, let's say, Gemini or Claude and so on and so forth, is really mind-boggling, right? But enterprises are using AI to transform themselves into intelligent enterprises. And that is by treating these agents as digital employees that will follow the same guardrails and oversight as human hires, so that collectively the entire organization can scale the intelligence part of it safely and accurately. And that involves a few things, right? So the way it can do it is through orchestration. And we are talking about agentic orchestration in our solution focus. We're calling it managed agents. how agents need to be orchestrated, well integrated, connect to legacy data sets. Unlocking that becomes important to derive that exponential value. I mean, let me give you one example of how QBurst we are doing this and we are seeing this amplification, right? In software engineering. So we have obviously digital engineering is a big portion of what we do. A lot of our engineers are coders and developers, software developers. Amplification means a developer isn't just writing lines of code, right? They are actually directing an AI squad of agents. Now, it could be Claude, it could be Cowork, it could be any of these, agentic AI tools and platforms that are there, and they're directing that to build, test, and deploy. And so the human actually, or the developer is actually providing the judgment and the empathy part, right? What you've talked about. Whereas AI, the agent provides the scale and the amplification, right? Quickly figuring out which libraries to use, what is the right code for a particular context, whether the syntax is right, to test it, to create the test case scenarios, so on and so forth, right? So I think there is an interplay between humans and agents, which is how AI can help amplify. Human is always still obviously in control, but a lot of the processing, lot of the scale, speed is coming through the agentic AI part. And there are other examples in the industry. So, I'm happy to get into that as well, but, that's just one example.
Thank you for that overview, Rak. And of course, I think what I can clearly understand that what earlier AI was assumed as a tool that executes, and it is now becoming something that extends human thinking. And
Yep.
I think that's where the real leverage comes in, because when AI handles synthesis and exploration, humans can operate at a higher altitude, focusing on strategy, creativity, and long-term impact rather than just execution. So
Hmm.
definitely it is more becoming like a cognitive amplifier. Now, moving ahead, because we are trying to deploy and scale AI. When it comes to workplace, I think trust is the invisible glue that holds managers and employees together. Now, today, confidence and reliability are not only built through personal interactions, but they're also shaped by the tools we use at work. Many
Mhm.
organizations now depend on AI for recognition, rewards, performance feedback, giving technology a very powerful role in shaping how employees experience fairness and transparency. The
Mhm.
reality is that these systems can work in two different ways. If handled thoughtfully, they bring consistency and strengthen connections. But if it is handled poorly, they risk creating distance and raising doubts about whether decisions are truly fair. So, over your journey, Rak, you have learned about building trust with teams as AI starts to influence decisions, workflows, and outcomes more directly. So, what are some of those learnings that you have gained, and our listeners would like to understand more about it so that they can implement in their respective organizations?
That's a fantastic question. I firmly believe that trust and technology are codependent, go hand in hand, and this relationship goes back a long way. One single line answer first, which I think exemplifies the role of trust. I believe trust is the speed limit to AI adoption. And if you don't have the right guardrails, you have to drive slowly while adopting AI. So trust is basically the limiting factor in how quickly enterprises or whoever is adopting AI will adopt it. Well, there are institutional tools and safeguards and all that. I will talk about that a little bit. At QBurst, we are starting to look at it more as glass box AI, which is essentially a transparent way of understanding what the AI tool is doing, what the model certification is, what has it been trained on, and then what are the algorithms and parameters that have been fed into it, right? So you probably heard about the concept of explainable AI. This has been there for a while. I have talked about it in the past as well. It's called XAI, where every AI model and now increasingly every autonomous agent must have some kind of a what is called in the industry as a provenance, right? So it must be able to show its work when queried. So if a claim has been denied, it should show why and what was the rationale or parameters it went through. If it has to make a medical diagnosis and come up with a decision, it has to be able to explain that. It has to be able to show the data lineage, right? It is used to reach a decision. So this can come in handy when you talked about fairness. You talked about consistency and accuracy. You talked about, multiple ways in which some of these results need to be tested or trusted, right, by individuals, consumers, businesses, etc. So that is one. The second is the human in the loop concept. Again, well-known principle, HITL. As we move towards autonomy, the human role is shifting, right? It is shifting from being a doer or a co-pilot to being more of an auditor or an orchestrator, right? And that itself becomes important to have that trust, right? So there should be a supervisory ability, an ability to turn off something which is going rogue, an ability to be able to fine tune and reset if things need to be done so, right? And then I think finally, the data sovereignty, or in general, the sovereignty of what is being used within an enterprise, right? Whether it's a private cloud or whether it is the kind of data which is being used to train the model, whether it is being kept secure, confidential, and is it compliance, right? So the intellectual property shouldn't become a training data for somebody else's model or outside, or whether it is following all the right regulations and privacy and confidentiality requirements in that geography or as per the law. So I think all those things will become important to build that trust, because ultimately human beings need to be able to work with what the AI models are suggesting and recommending. And they need to be able to say that, look, this is fair, this is compliant, and I believe in it. I mean, it is a new world, Priya, right? I mean, the new world is that trust is no longer with institutions. I mean, people don't believe governments, people don't believe news sites. They think a lot of it is fake news. There is so much of, slop, as you said, out in the internet and so on. So people have not sure what to trust and whom to trust. They can't trust media, they can't trust government, they can't trust institutions. And a lot of that trust is now getting fed into the algorithms that are part of our day-to-day life, right? So how do you trust these algorithms, these decision frameworks, which are essentially driving these AI models, is really our basic underlying, reality in life in AI world.
Definitely, Rak. And I really liked your point that trust is the speed limit to AI adoption. And
Mhm.
I think that also highlights a very crucial cultural shift because AI can't be treated as a black box that replaces intuition. It really has to be positioned as an augmenting partner that teams can question, validate, and even challenge. The psychological safety, knowing it's okay to push back on AI outputs, I think is what keeps trust intact. You also mentioned about, in your earlier responses that it's important that we ensure certain guardrails in terms of ensuring that there's safety and accountability when we are witnessing right now how, autonomy is increasing with agentic AI. So, what are certain
Mhm.
guardrails you think, organizations can deploy to ensure that there's trust and accountability?
Yeah, and especially with now trust being more algorithm driven, right? And a lot of the content and outcomes are no longer human generated as well. So how do you actually put in the guardrails to make sure you can trust that? So I think first and foremost, right sources of data, right? Trusted sources of data, trusted data models are critical, whether internal or external, right? Second, the right kind of decision frameworks, training, algorithms? Are you using the right models which have been verified for safety, for compliance? How are you doing the inferencing for these models in your environment? Have you secured the perimeter of the enterprise and what is being shared? Who can share it? Access control, checkpoints on the exit perimeter, etc. Very important is what kind of AI governance are you put in place, right? Who's allowed to use models? Is there a gateway to access some of these? Is there a sandbox to experiment in the enterprise? What are the aspects of compliance, of security, right? How are you actually going around identifying, training, onboarding agents? I think that's something a lot of enterprises are just waking up to. I think that you have to treat some of these agents, whether they're coming from out of the box, like packages, whether it's CRM, ERP packages, or these are custom built agents, you have to start treating them like human workforce in some ways, which means they have to have some clearly defined scopes. They have to have some oversight, a mechanism to give them feedback, prevent them from making mistakes, have them learn the rules, organizational, written, unwritten, some kind of a coordination layer where agents are registered, just like human beings and employees register, right? Obtain the right permissions for what they can do, and checks and balances that essentially all human organizations make to make them function well, right? To make them so robust, critical, safe in a critical situation, and so on. How do you do that with agents? And especially when human and agents are coming together, you cannot have a different set of rules for human employees and a different set of environment for agents. It has to be very similar. So that's one basic insight for leaders as they implement AI, and it's also an important guardrail, right? I also mentioned things like explainability, XAI, human in the loop, data sovereignty. I think those are obviously, well-known concepts. But I think this whole thing about guardrails to prepare for agentic workforce is something which organizations are just evolve into, right? And how that supervisory layer should be put in place to ensure there are controls and audits and checks and balances.
Definitely. And I think we are in the middle of an AI hype cycle where both utopian
Mhm,
and dystopian visions distort reality. AI won't make everyone a genius, but it won't make expertise irrelevant either. The truth is, more nuanced and more interesting is that AI amplifies whatever cognitive capabilities you bring to it. Give it clear, grounded direction in domain expertise, and it becomes a powerful multiplier. Use it blindly,
mhm.
and it produces mediocre outputs that reflect its training data rather than your unique insights. And thank you so much, Rak, for taking all the time and effort to be on a podcast today and helping us understand that the future of AI will be defined by our ability to translate speculative promises into enduring, measurable impacts. It's important that we invest in necessary infrastructure, championing ethical governance, and fostering
Mhm.
collaborative ecosystems in order to steer the AI revolution towards a future where innovation not only disrupts but also delivers sustainable and widespread prosperity. Thank you so
Yep.
much for your insights, Rak. It was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you, Priya, for some very insightful questions. Enjoyed the conversation. We are transitioning from a period of AI fascination to a period of AI accountability. So returns are important and
Yeah,
how intelligently enterprises do it. So happy,
definitely.
our organization is happy to help.
Thank you so much, Rak. So, this is for our listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion on how AI is more of a cognitive amplifier and not replacing humans, because in the end, AI is in the human and not in the machine. Stay tuned for upcoming podcast, and you can view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.